Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today, I have a special guest with me from the Ergo ecosystem. His name is Ross Weir. Weir.
No one ever gets that right. Yeah, it's weird.
Okay, I apologize for that. He is a software developer and he's building some neat things on top of Ergo. So, welcome, Ross.
Thank you for having me.
So, I've seen your latest developments come out of the latest Ergo hack, number six. At the time of this recording in 2023, I believe you got one of the top places in that competition for some of the projects you've been working on. So why don't you share with us a bit more of what you're working on and what is your motivation behind working on them and why Ergo?
Yep. So the project I worked on for Ergo Hack VI was called Ergo Tizen or Tizen, or there's another word that no one knows how to pronounce. Um, yeah, so the idea behind that one was to try and make a node that could run on smart devices. So Tizen is the operating system that Samsung uses for their smart devices like their TVs and their phones and yeah, all that sort of stuff. So the idea was to try to get a node that could run natively on Tizen. So the idea behind that was trying to make a node that would run on web as well, because if you make something that runs on web, then it can run on Tizen, or however you pronounce it. And yeah, that unlocks a whole heap of other platforms as well by being able to run on web. So that was the goal behind that. And yeah, I think that turned out all right. I managed to get a node that could run on the web with so it requires another component to be able to run on web because you can't do like certain things natively in the web, but it
Hmm.
kind of works. So yeah, that's cool. And the other project that I'm working on at the moment is called Bit Domains, which is a naming service, kind of like Ethereum name service or ENS if you're familiar with that one on Ethereum, same sort of thing.
I'll begin at the end there with that project, Bit Domains. Why do you feel it's important to have a sort of naming service in general? Do you feel like the lowest hanging fruit is to have more accessible user adoption if everybody could kind of just have handles for everything like we do on Twitter, for example?
Yeah, for sure. I think human like readable names when you're sending funds to another person, I think is pretty important to have for sure.
And going back to Ergo Tizen, what is the kind of fundamentally important thing when it comes to nodes? I feel like they get very overlooked. People tend to understand more about miners and profitability and things like that because it's just very straightforward. But what is the importance and significance, especially when it comes to decentralization and resiliency, in having a node and making it accessible for people to be easy, make it easier for them to host a node and run one?
Yeah, that's a good point too. So the easier it is to run a node, hopefully the more people that will run a node, which adds to the health of the network overall. So the more nodes that are on the network, the more decentralized it is, which is good for everyone.
And going back to sort of your motivation, you're a software developer. Um, I don't know too much about your background. We've just met in this interview, but why take it upon yourself to kind of run with these projects and build them on Ergo in the first place? Why Ergo?
Uh, I really like the ethos behind Ergo and what the project stands for. Um, yeah, I think it's truly a project that is trying to push for keeping our freedoms. I think, like in the next techno, technological age, that was tough. I think that systems like Ergo that focus on decentralization are going to be very important for keeping our freedoms.
Yeah, well, that would be a good motivating factor to do things like this. Um, were there any other projects that you also kind of looked at and said, "Oh, that's really interesting," out of the Ergo hacks? And I mean, on a more of a Ergo Foundation basis, what would you like to see in terms of organization and future Ergo hacks? I feel like from my experiences where Armenio and other people of the EF, they can't be doing this on their own forever and giving the incentive. It kind of has to be more of a community approach. But I was curious to see your take.
Yeah, for the first part of that, which other projects I liked so there was a lot of good ones, but Lethos I think is obviously a really good one. The decentralized mining, that sounds awesome. Um, I'm not too up to date with DeFi stuff, but Sigma options also looked cool. So those are the two good ones, I think. And as for the second part, um, maybe it would be good to do both. Like maybe the community could run some at more regular cadences, like every 3 months or something, and maybe the EF makes like a big one once a year or something like that to celebrate in some way, or maybe something like that. I'm not sure.
It's kind of one of those awkward choke points when it comes to trying to bring about and pioneer new technologies in a true decentralized way. When do we stop looking at the sort of the leaders or the core developers and everybody else that we tend to see on a weekly basis and the formal structure of the Ergo brand? And then when do we run with and make that internal shift as a community where we're not looking for leaders anymore and we're seeing them more in ourselves? That's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to interview you, because it kind of feels like, okay, you worked on these things, but people don't really know about you. They may have never seen you. That was my experience, and just try to highlight a bit more of the inner workings on why do this, um, what are you doing, and why it's important. So, as a software developer, does it concern you at all, kind of the slow levels of growth on Ergo? And when we look at it from the promise of the technology, right? Because it's a huge mountain to really have solid foundations, but also be able to climb it properly. Because really, if we did, and all of the promises were realized, and people had the right, gave importance to the right things in the industry, there's really very little competition to what Ergo could provide, in my opinion, from the rest of the crypto industry.
Yeah, I think the other part to that is having things that add tangible value to people's lives. Um, I think there's still a bit of work to be done there on Ergo. Um, I think once we get more more D apps that are providing real value, I think yeah, that's when things will start to pop off, as the kids say.
I hear a lot about, oh, we should have more education, documentation to onboard more developers and programmers. What was your experience like kind of getting onboarded with the ecosystem and learning how to build here? What were some of the pros and what were some of the things that could potentially be worked on?
Um, when I first started, documentation was a big one that I would have said. I think it still is a bit rough, but the team is doing an awesome job to improve the documentation. Like it's way better than what it was a year and a half ago. And yeah, I really like that the work that Glasgow has done on that, like tidying up the documentation, adding the chatbot to the website. I've already been using that pretty thoroughly since he added that. So that's awesome. That's a big one, I think, adding that chatbot. Um, so yeah, I think like it's improving a lot, but documentation is still something that I think could be improved a little bit. And like that'll come down to people like me as well, that is actually using the documentation. People like me should be if we see stuff in the documentation that's a bit hard to work with, maybe open a pull request to improve it or something like that. It's not just up to them. So yeah.
Yeah, Mark Glasgow is kind of one of the unsung heroes. He's always behind the scenes and building up things that are necessary, but can obviously be overlooked very often. Um, I wanted to ask you in particular, going forward in this ecosystem, how do you, if it was a perfect world and you can kind of envision how Ergo would progress, what type of progression would you want to see going forward as we approach kind of this fourth year's anniversary? 4 years in this industry is a very long time. And obviously things they've begun to exponentially grow, but it's still very slow in the grand scheme of things. Are there any sort of breakthroughs that you would expect to help to expand this, like Rosenbridge, or will it really just take it slow and steady wins the race at the end of the day?
Um, I think projects like Rosenbridge and things in that vein, so more onboarding opportunities, or I think that's probably a problem that isn't really solved in the industry as a whole, is onboarding regular people into crypto. Um, so I think that's something that would be good as well. I also think that slow and steady is a really good approach to take as well when it comes to financial systems. I don't
Yeah.
think that's the industry where you want to move fast and break things. So I think that slow and steady is probably a good approach as well.
Does the minor emissions or any other aspect of Ergo strike you as particularly exceptional in terms of features or potential drawbacks? Some people may worry that the minor emissions are decreasing too rapidly in tandem with the adoption of the technology, or rather the building of the ecosystem.
Yeah, the minor emission stuff, to be honest, is something that I don't really know much about. So I don't know much about the trade-offs either way. I know that Ergo is being complimented from like other ecosystems for having an aggressive emission schedule, but I'm not sure what that actually means, to be honest.
Right. So for you, it's mainly about the building and the actual technology versus uh, what the price of Earth can be or what miners may find it, particularly useful or attractive when they're mining cryptocurrencies.
So far, I've only been learning about crypto technology for about a year and a half or so. So mining is something that I'll get to eventually,
Yeah.
especially in Ergo. Like it's critical to Ergo, so I'd like to know a bit more about it eventually, for sure.
How did you find Ergo within the giant sea of ecosystems?
So I started off my crypto journey in Cardano, and as everyone does when you're in Cardano, you hear about Ergo, and yeah, just from there.
Right. So going forward, are there kind of other projects that you intend to pursue? Do you still have a lot to do with Ergo Tizens or the bit domains? Like, what is the roadmap for you personally in this ecosystem going forward?
For me personally, I'm going to be focusing on the Bit Domains project, getting that launched eventually when it's ready, and we'll see where we go from there. I'd like to do more on Ergo Tizen. It's called Ogre at the moment. I've changed the name like 4 times. Um, but that's what it is now. I'd like to do that because I think that it'd still be really cool to have like a Node app on your phone that you install from like the Play Store or something. I think that'd be sweet. But at the moment, yeah, going to focus on bit domains.
Are there any kind of the core features of Ergo in terms of technological capabilities that maybe you don't have time to work on, but you would love to see somebody else flesh out and run with?
Um, I think that so a while ago I opened an EIP for stealth addresses, but I haven't really had time to go back and address any feedback on that on GitHub. But stealth addresses I think would be something that would be cool to get integrated into wallets and get a bit more use.
Speaking of that, what do you make of the privacy debate, especially when it surrounds the Western world and most predominantly maybe in the US? Living in a Western country that is not the US, what do you feel about that narrative? Do you just kind of disregard it and focus on the kind of the fundamental features of human rights, so to speak, or does that ever concern you as a developer or as a programmer?
Um, yeah, I think that everyone should have the right to privacy if they want to have privacy. Um, yeah, for sure. That's something that I think is important.
Does it make you feel at all concerned, like if, for example, it can be kind of uncomfortable to not have maybe your country's support behind you when it comes to this industry? Does that ever come into your mind, like maybe I should focus on something that's a little more solidified in terms of regulations, in terms of uh, boundaries, and at the bottom line, maybe profitability?
Not really. It kind of does the opposite for me when I see because I feel like crypto or something like crypto is so important for the future of economics and finance and for our freedoms. So when I see the government like maybe taking a offensive stance or something, it just makes me want to work on these solutions and get them out quicker because I feel like it's more urgent when they start doing that. So
Right, right. Um, How about for kind of the recent events with Bitcoin having problems with transaction fees and stuff? I feel like kind of the what would you say, the Vine image of Bitcoin is at times it shows its cracks, and we just finally look at it as like some, just another blockchain that has its own problems. Do you pay any attention to that? And does that make you feel like, aha, I am working on something that's actually improving versus getting more difficult to work with over time as new features are implemented, such as the BRC20 tokens, for example?
yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that Bitcoin is awesome and was good at what it was doing, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be able to keep up and adjust and yeah, have be able to take on new features very easily at the moment. Um, so I think a project like Ergo that is built pretty closely off Bitcoin and is built with the future in mind is probably a good project to stick with.
Does it sort of frustrate you or bother you at all that kind of the core tenets of Ergo are not one of the most attractive or most important features when it comes to um, the user adoption in crypto in general?
Sorry, repeat that again.
Does it ever frustrate you understanding what Ergo can provide and what the future can be if people focus more on these technologies, but then not seeing that kind of intersect with user demand? We see meme coins and things of that nature, and that's really what drives up the liquidity and the volumes. Does that ever kind of rub you the wrong way or make you think, oh, we have a long way to go?
Um, Not really. Uh, I think those sort of things. My gut feeling is that projects like Ergo and crypto, it's the type of thing that regular users might not know that they need until they need it. Um, so like, yeah, that's how I feel about that sort of thing. I think that maybe regular users might not understand the importance of things like crypto and Ergo until it's required, until like a government tries to do something crazy or something like that, maybe.
So in a way, you believe that there will come a point due to the inefficiencies of governments that this technology would not just be attractive, but it will be imperative to use. Like there just simply won't be a better option than to use these technologies because the governments kind of dig themselves into a deeper, deeper hole.
Yeah, I think that the alternative is going to be a central um, bank digital currency. And I have worries about the implications of that. So I think that it's necessary to have an alternative to that when the time comes.
I'm trying to think what else I can ask you. You're very brief at times. I think I'm talking more in
Sorry.
the questions than the answers you're providing, but that's fine. You're like a Nepo pal. You're just straight to the point. Um, with all of this being said, are there any other ecosystems that you look at and you're like, maybe I should build something there? That seems cool. Maybe a few of the chains from the UTXO Alliance or
Yeah, I've looked into lithium a little bit. Um, Played around with a couple of smart contracts and played around with a virtual machine a little bit to see how that works and to sort of compare it to Ergo because I don't really have any exposure to any other technology really in crypto apart from a little bit of Cardano. So I've explored a lithium a little bit, which was good fun. I think that I don't know, Ergo is like my first love, so I find it hard to move on to other projects.
yeah, that can definitely be a mindset. Alephium is yeah, they're very friendly and it's interesting because most people that I've interviewed, they seem to have like a long history with crypto and they see it evolve over time. And you're kind of in a way like a tabula rasa. You're like a blank slate. This is something new to you. And you just happen to stumble your way into what I believe is some of the best technology out there. And also the UTXO Alliance in general, if you look at kind of what they would be valued by market cap versus the potential there, it's night and day. Um, so going forward, I mean, do you have an end game or any sort of kind of place and time where you feel that you won't have to be participating in these competitions or won't have to be building things because so many people will just hopefully come in and do it for you and then you could just be the end user versus building the things for the end users.
Yeah, that'd be cool, but I think I'd always see myself as building stuff or wanting to build stuff. Um, because I just love software and love engineering and love building stuff. So I think even if that day comes, I'll probably still be looking for things that I can build or things that I can do.
Do you tend to uh, work within a small collaborative team, or do you really do so far? Have you done these Ergo Tizen and Bit domains on your own, like solo wolf it?
Yeah, I'm a bit more of a solo wolf. I think I'm looking to there's some supporting applications that need to be built for the Bit Domains project. So I've been talking with Nemo to maybe do a collab there and work on something. But yeah, mostly been solo stuff.
And are your projects, do they intend to be open source, or is there anything about that that you can share?
Yeah, everything that I work on is all open source and will always be open source.
Good. Wonderful. I'm happy to hear it. I wasn't sure. It would have been awkward if you said no. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, always open source.
and and kind of to wrap up, it's like a we're doing like a bullet minute trivia questions here at this point. But what is your kind of background? Not to go into too many personal details, but in terms of software development, what attracted you to the industry? What was your kind of first experiences, and what do you do in the real world in terms of using your skills, outside of Ergo?
Um, to be honest, technology didn't really draw me in at all because I don't have a background in cryptography. So the terms and the features that Ergo was offering kind of meant nothing to me when I was first joining. It was more the Ergo manifesto that lured me in. When I read that, I was like, yeah, this is the one that I want to contribute to and to try to build stuff on. If it's got good technology, that's a bonus as well, which it seemed like it was because the project had got a lot of good publicity, I guess, or kind words from other people that are prominent in the industry, like Charles, obviously. So it seemed like it was going to have good technology and it had a really good ethos, in my opinion. So I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good one. As for what I'm doing outside of Ergo, so I'm working in cloud technology at the moment, pretty much. So we're like the position that I'm in up until recently was working as a subject matter expert for all things cloud, so AWS and a little bit of Azure, and just building internal systems at my company for helping other engineers work with cloud technology. So we have like an internal platform that other teams use instead of AWS directly because we're a really massive company. We're a big company, and so that just gives everyone a consistent way of using cloud technology where I'm working currently.
Have you ever looked
Uh,
into Flux?
Not yet, but that's another one that I want to look into for sure. Trying to give you some longer answers.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for helping me out here. Um, could you, I feel like the cloud, kind of piggybacking off of that, people don't really get how that functions or if privacy is really at the core values of the companies that produce those types of products. Is using the cloud safe in terms of privacy, or is it really a case by case thing? And how does that function? Is it just infinite server rooms that keep your data and then you kind of call it when you need it?
From the privacy aspect, not really. So if you're a user of a product that is utilizing cloud, it's not really, so that's more on like the company itself. It doesn't really have anything to do with the cloud side of things, I would say. Um, from a business that might be looking to use a cloud provider, there's not really any privacy there either. Like you can't really hire AWS resources or rent AWS resources anonymously. Um, yeah, so yeah, privacy I don't think is something that cloud really considers or cares about. So
And in terms of how it functions, where is the data typically stored? And I mean, it kind of seems like it can go on forever if you purchase more and more space. Any clarity on that?
yeah, so AWS, they have different regions, and each region is broken up into different areas for like redundancy. So using Australia as an example, they've probably got a Sydney region, and within Sydney, they've got two or three different data centers at different locations. So if one data center has like an emergency or something, there's redundancy, and the other data centers should continue being able to serve your data or your web application or whatever it happens to be. So yeah, so a company like AWS is broken up into many regions, and then within each region is broken up even further to prevent against natural disasters and that sort of thing.
So for privacy, if it isn't like paramount, is there always an attack vector there that somebody can gain access to sensitive materials that you may, as an individual, stored onto the cloud at any given time?
Yes. Uh, I'm just trying to think of how to talk about it. So someone trying to like attack AWS directly and getting in and getting your data, I don't think is very likely. But what you often see is people working at companies and putting sensitive credentials places where they shouldn't be, and then people getting access to those credentials and then being able to access everything that's in their cloud account, I guess you would say. So things like posting API tokens in public chat rooms and stuff, and then people being able to get access to things happens every now and then.
Kind of finally on the topic of technology that we may or may not understand very well in the public eye. Do you have any thoughts on AI? Is that mostly helpful? Is that threatening in the long term, or is that kind of like in some ways hype? What do you think?
It's definitely hype. Which way it goes, I think is going to be a coin flip. Who knows? AI is crazy. That's when I first used ChatGPT, it blew my mind the things it could do. So I can't wait to see what it's going to be like in 6 months. Hopefully, we're still here, alive, and using it, and they haven't enslaved us yet. But yeah, I think AI is going to change everything. I think it's crazy.
Are there, I guess, tying in to the main theme of Ergo and you building on it, do you see, for example, you mentioned that the Ergo website has a chatbot into it that can help you when you have like kind of questions about the documentation and things like that. Do you see like a clear path where this can help embolden building on Ergo or in other ways that may not currently be available?
I think that maybe it could help people that don't have a technical background to build on Ergo. So if you're like a banker or like a finance guy and you know how financial systems work, maybe you could prompt it to build something on Ergo in that way. Like maybe something like that could be doable and could be cool. Um, what else? Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the possibilities are endless when it comes to AI at the moment. I think there's going to be a lot of things that we're not aware of right now that could happen.
Yeah, yeah, that would be a good conservative guess. Yes.
Yep.
Uh, so anyway, I think we covered all the bases in a relatively short amount of time. Is there anything that you would want to kind of say to the community, the very few people that watch this show, um, about kind of your favorite things about it, any constructive criticisms, anything at all, really. Feedback.
I think probably my favorite thing about Ergo at the moment is the community and people like yourself and people on Twitter that are just like always talking about Ergo, always sharing Ergo news and promoting Ergo and just talking about it. I think that's really cool. And I don't think many projects have people that are truly passionate about the project. So shout out to you guys and yeah, and the community. I think that's cool.
I appreciate it. Well, anyway, thank you for taking time out of your day. I know we've been trying to coordinate this for a while, and the time zones are definitely not helping us. Um, so thank you for, helping to get it done and just kind of putting a face to a Twitter handle. into a project. Um, and also thank you guys for watching. If you want to find out more about what he's building, Ross, and kind of a little more about the Ergo hacks and what projects came out of that, I'll put that in the description below. So thank you.